The following is my conversation with Alberto Morgando, CEO of the iconic cycling brand Mavic. Alberto shares his fascinating career journey from mechanical engineering in Torino to leading major multinational companies before ultimately taking the helm at Mavic. We explore his management philosophy, the unique challenges of revitalizing a legendary brand, and his strategic approach for navigating the volatile cycling industry. A truly compelling conversation about leadership, business transformation, and the evolving future of cycling. This is the Business of Cycling podcast. So Alberto, thank you so much. We've had some technical difficulties. We've had some scheduling difficulties, but I think the world is telling us that this is going to be a hard interview to make happen, but we're going to make it happen. So thank you for coming on again. CEO, it's so special to have a CEO on today. So thank you so much for your time. I know your time is extremely valuable, but I know that you will be providing some really interesting insight into your mandate at Mavic and kind of how you got here. So maybe you just want to start out telling us a little bit about your background, where you're from, kind of where you grew up.
Yes, but thank you very much for inviting me. But first of all, my background. I'm Italian. I've been studying in Italy, and I have an engineering background. I studied at the Politecnico in Turin, in Torino, in mechanical engineering. So and this is, it's kind of helped me, even if I have not really follow on a pretty technical career, because pretty soon I moved from engineering to project management and more management and business. But having this engineering background is helping me to understand, to discuss with the technical department. And during all my career, this has always been pretty helpful, having this possibility to connect easily on technical issues, on technical topics, as well as on more marketing and commercial topics. So I'm pretty proud of my technical background, and I think it's something that has been pretty valuable during all my career.
So you're
Uh,
from Torino.
yes, I am.
You grew up in Torino, middle class family, kind of pretty average middle class Italian family,
Yes, yes.
and you decided to study engineering. Why?
I I grew up in yes, in Torino, in the center of Torino, and my father was a doctor. My mother was working in the Fiat Group, so that for Torino is pretty classic. I I decided to study engineering because I have to say it was I was when I was 19, I was not really sure about what I wanted to do in my life. I was really focused on the sport at the moment.
What sport?
I was playing tennis at
Okay.
decent level, not enough to be a professional, but doing tournament, etc. And so engineering was kind of pretty wide in terms of opportunities in the business sector. At that time, engineering was technical, but it was starting to provide also some courses on project management, on a little bit of economics. I didn't want to be only on business, because I thought that having this technical view would have been very interesting for me, and I was pretty curious about all the techniques and the product development and so on. So engineer was probably, it was kind of a choice to open a lot of doors and allow me to make my choice a little bit later.
Okay. And so you wanted some flexibility, but it sounded like you knew that maybe not super technical was going to be your way that you wanted to go in the end, but that you did feel like being in that field, you needed to have some training. So what was the first job that you took out of college, after college?
Yeah, after college, I entered in. I had an experience of a couple of years in a small size logistic companies in France. That was my first move to towards Paris, and I was working on the quality system. And basically, it was a pretty small company, so pretty soon I took some responsibilities. I was in charge of the ISO 9000 setup for the company, and I would say after 1 year and a half, I had the opportunity to open the UK branch of this company. So very soon I was facing kind of small, very small P&L responsibilities and managing people because I had to manage a warehouse with around 10 people. And so I was facing again both some technical issues, but also organizational and more, let's say, accounting issues.
So
Yeah,
why did you, a couple questions. Why did you go to Paris, first of all? And then my second question is going to be around, do you recommend people out of school starting off in smaller companies as kind of a, versus going into a bigger company? So I guess starting off, like, why did you go to Paris first,
yeah.
or why did you go to
I
France?
I I went to Paris. It was kind of it was an opportunity. I was looking for an opportunity abroad. I wanted to leave Italy, not because I was not good in Torino, but because I wanted to see something different. So, and Paris was an opportunity. I had some others, but Paris was the one that was more
But you wanted to
interesting
go
for me.
abroad. You were like, I want
Yes,
to get
yes,
out of Italy.
yes.
Why?
I wanted to experience something, let's say, more international. Torino is a very nice place, extremely. The quality of life is very, very high.
But it's
But
provincial.
again,
It's
is a
provincial.
little, yeah, let's say, is a little bit close.
Sure.
Is a little bit old school, and so at that time I really wanted to experience something different. And Paris, I fell in love first time when I was 17. I went to a school trip in Paris, and I fell in love with Paris. So I thought that as a professional and personal experience would have been extremely powerful and interesting for me. So it was kind of a normal, a given choice for me.
Okay. And so, and then doing that, it sounds like you had some affinity for being kind of getting outside of Torino and getting some new experiences, which I can totally relate to. And I think that certain people are just predisposed to want to kind of explore. They're curious. Maybe it's a curiosity. And then you said that you started in a small company. Now, as a professional, an experience, as a professional advice or professional experience, is that something that you recommend, or do you recommend going to bigger companies? Was that just something that worked for you?
For me, it worked pretty well. In smaller company, you can get, say, if you want to have responsibility, if you want to move fast, smaller company are easier because, again, a smaller company, you are not blocked around your position. You can go much more beyond the
Your
position
role?
for which
Sure.
you have been hired.
Yeah.
So for me, was at that time was extremely interesting. As I said, I grabbed the opportunity because after 1 year and a half, they opened these branches in UK. I was in the project, and then I kind of they were looking for somebody to be responsible of the branch, and I was probably 25 or something like that, and I propose I propose and I got this opportunity. So really for me it's a very good choice, was a very good choice to get into a small company. Nevertheless, after then I stay another year and a half with this company. I felt at that time that I didn't want to be stuck on a logistic environment. I didn't want to be stuck into a too small company, and so I switched. I changed. and I accepted a proposal from a company belonging to the Fiat Group. And basically, I moved after 3 years. I moved into a big company. So I think the experience in a small company is very strong. It's very important. But I felt at the time that I needed to have both view, small and big company. And I think that my career and also how I deal with the fact of having been in both small size and big conglomerate, it really helps me. So
Sure.
I think both are important.
Both are important, sure, for growth. And so
Yeah.
you did get some P&L experience. Sounds like you felt like management and managing like a whole department felt really comfortable to you very soon, very quickly. And so did you continue on that path throughout your time at this Fiat subsidiary, and then did you move on to other companies with similar roles?
Yeah, basically, when I moved into the subsidiary of Fiat, I of course I in terms of responsibility, I did a step back because I couldn't get P&L responsibility. I was in charge of sales and marketing for France. That
Sure.
was an important responsibility. It was a big market, but of course, it was less in term of size. It was more important, but in term of full responsibility, was certainly I had a sales and marketing director over me, managing director, etc. So, but I had the possibility to understand how a big company works in terms of organization, in terms of relation between different departments, and how to between countries, because the headquarter was in Italy and I was still in France. So it gave me a much better understanding of mainly the organization and the way a big company works. At that time, and I spent another, I think, around 3 years in the Fiat Group. At the time, Fiat was a little bit old school, so it was quite difficult to move fast. It was kind of a big and slow, say, type of company.
This was before Marchione.
Oh, yes, yes, it
Okay.
was many years before my Marchione. And I felt at the time that really, even though I had some P&L responsibility, some business knowledge, I wanted to have a much better understanding on business, pure business. And then I decided to took a sabbatic to go to an MBA. And I spent, so I entered in SEAD, that is in close to Paris, is one of pretty important MBA. And I spent 10 months working hard, studying. That after 6 years of work, coming back at school is weird. It's very strange, but it's very strong, very strong experience. And again, as an engineer, he opened me and he gave me really all the business, marketing, finance. We did a lot of finance, project management, organizational strategy, say also, or yes, all organizational behavior. We worked in a more Anglo-Saxon way. It means we were working on cases. You had we were around 600 from all over the world. So you really had a strong exchange with the people from other culture and other working experience. And it was again pretty important for the following of my career.
So the MBA you're saying, was a pretty important piece, and so that
Yeah,
gave you sort of a springboard into more responsibility, more opportunity.
yeah.
And I see that you worked in consulting, you worked for an appliances company, you worked for
Yes.
Schneider, which is a
Yeah.
huge company, Kohler. Like, you've worked for a lot of multinational companies, important European multinational companies, and it sounds like that this MBA was sort of a springboard towards that.
Yeah, definitely it was. It allowed me to get to a different step of my career. I would say that before I was very young. It was everything was more kind of an experience period. After that, I decided to get into strategic consultancy because again, period of time of seeing a lot of different environment. I stayed 3 years in a Boston Consulting Group. I probably went through 10 to 12 different industries. The
Wow.
projects were kind between 3 to 6 months, and you have a huge pressure because you need.
Right.
Remember, the partner the first day told me that you have 1 week to ask a stupid question. After 1 week, you cannot you cannot ask any more stupid question. You need to
Wow.
be on track and understand the business. And of course you work a lot and but you learn a lot.
So
Uh,
you did a really hard kind of crash course in, management, and then you did, like I said, in Fiat, and then you went into an MBA, and then you went into consult. So you're doing like a lot of the things, classic things, but all the right. It sounds like the right things to be sort of on a management track. And so that was sort of how it went. Then you were going. It feels like, I mean, the way that I see it here, Alberto, is like you really wanted to be a manager and executive, kind of to run some of these companies. Was that something that just felt right to you, or
yes.
was it a passion of yours?
Yes, was my goal, and the step into strategic consultancy was kind of a really the right step to do. I also understood that I I did like strategy and I did like a short project, etc. But my really what I was really liking was kind of developing something a little bit more long term. This is why at a certain point, after 2 years in Boston Consulting, I switched to Indesit. That was one of our customer, and I was there in first in charge for a post merger integration. Basically, Indesit bought UK competitor, and it was about integrating an Italian fast mover company with a UK more traditional kind of company. So it was from a business point was very interesting, and from a human point was also very interesting. And then within Indesit, I moved to a director position as a marketing director. So to really have a team, to have a project, a P&L, etc. So it was kind of a natural evolution for me, and I felt that the environment of the company was with the more long-term project, about 2 to 3 years, was what I really liked, because I think sometimes in 3 to 6 months you go fast, you understand, but then it's the moment to do the things, you are leaving. It was a bit frustrating for me.
So so it was like the consulting was interesting, but it was like it's sort of you wanted to harvest the fruit that you were planting, it sounds like.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
but tell me why, is this just, was it, I mean, I'm going to ask it like, is it about like the money, or is it just something that felt really the right to you to be in the management position? Like
No,
why do you like, why did this work for you?
it works. No, the money is never, it's important, of course, but it's not the key. And I think that what is important at the end is to have the satisfaction of being able to solve a problem, to bring your team to a different level, to make the company move forward,
The impact,
and
you
the
like to be able to
impact.
have the impact.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I understand.
I think this is at the end is the key satisfaction, and sometimes having after years having still be in contact with your colleagues and having knowing that they have they have been able to also to make their own career, also thanks to the work we have done together and what
Sure.
they learned from you and from the experience together.
But I got to ask you, Alberto, you went from working in multinational companies. I mean, you went on to work for Schneider, for Kohler,
Yeah,
now you're in the little cycling business, you know?
exactly.
And cycling is it's international, but it is very small in terms of the niche that it's in.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess we can get more into how you became involved in working with Mavic, but what so far working in big national multinational companies, organizations, and then moving into cycling, which is a niche market, which is also very global, but it's very niche. What are some of the things that have struck you most?
I I would say when I moved to I had some pretty long experience both in Indesit and in Kohler. And Kohler is a multinational, is a multi-billion company.
Sure,
I
huge,
I
huge.
finally I was in charge of a business unit. It was very interesting, but at the end I was a bit frustrating because in such a big multinational, I think that your impact, you spend quite a lot of time doing politics,
Okay,
organization,
sure, of course.
and try to explain to all the, let's say, I was
Stakeholders.
in Europe and all
Yeah,
the stakeholders and mainly the corporate stakeholders, explaining what you were doing
right.
instead of doing things. And
So the impact, then I think I'm going to interrupt you because I get it. You're saying
yeah.
that the bigger the company you get, the less the impact is.
Yes, sometimes the feeling I had at a certain point was that, and at the time I got in touch with the hunters, and they proposed me a completely different size of company, but to step from a business unit managing director position of a big company to step to a CEO position in a mid-sized company.
Okay, and
Also kind of
when you say
yeah.
mid-size, are we talking about the lingerie
Well,
company?
yeah, it was before the lingerie company. It was in the heating system, biomass heating
Okay,
system.
sure,
It was kind of a 25 to 30 million
sure,
euros, so small company.
small size
But
company, sure.
yeah, but with private equity as a shareholder, and I was kind of I wanted to test me on this different environment where you are basically
Under pressure, a lot of
yeah,
pressure.
you have a lot of pressure, you have a lot of you really feel responsible for the company, for the people, for the and was already, I mean, was a difficult situation because it was in a very difficult market situation, in a kind of a transition period. So we had to make some restructuring, and again, I I felt probably again the willingness of having a strong impact and to to kind of push back all the politics and being fully responsible with the shareholder. But
Sure, sure,
shareholder has a role, especially the private equity is. The role is not operational. So at the end, on Monday morning, when you are in the office, you have to have 360 degrees understanding, to take decision on very important and sometimes also on small things. And this is what kind of motivate me. And I felt that really this size of company was even better for me than a big multinational. So I really deep dive into this new challenge, and that was very hard because the market at the time was very difficult, and but very satisfactory from a professional and personal point of view. So
so this was your first role as a CEO. You've got
yeah,
the whole everything on your shoulders,
yeah.
and it looks like you were there for about 5 years, right into COVID. And you were happy with that experience? Like you were happy with how that went?
Yeah, it was very tough at a certain time. We had some, we went through let's say, the situation when I arrived was very, very difficult. We were losing quite a lot of money. We were able to kind of redress the situation, and we had some a little bit of chance because basically we were able to sold the company to a bigger group just before the COVID. It was
Oh, okay.
I think we signed the agreement the 25th of February 2020, and a few weeks later everything
Wow.
closed. So
Yeah,
we had a little bit of luck on that.
sure.
And again, only probably 1 month later, the same private equity fund proposed me to take over as a CEO of the lingerie company. And that was where the experience as a strategic consultant was pretty helpful because basically I entered in a sector that was completely different. It was I've always been more in a technical environment and
Sure.
in a mechanical environment. But this consultancy experience helped me to understand, hopefully to be credible with the team, with the shareholders quite quite soon. We were in the deep of the crisis of the COVID, and so it was kind of a crash intervention
Sure.
on that experience.
So I think I'm seeing the path here. I think this is really fun for me just to kind of see how people kind of get to where they are, because to look at someone and say, "Oh, that's the CEO of Mavic." Well, it's like, "Well, how did he get here?" And so I think we're seeing, you've done a lot of experience in obviously consulting, and then you tried your hand at multinationals, and maybe that was a bit wasn't quite a fit for your style and your predisposition. Then you move back to kind of then some leadership roles in these, mid-size, small and mid-sized businesses with a private equity involvement, which, has a certain skill set that you need. So then I guess now it makes a lot of sense to me that Mavic, can you tell the story about then how you
Yes,
got to come into touch with Mavic, and
yeah,
maybe give people a little bit more of background on what was happening to Mavic at the time when
of
you
course.
came on?
Of course. But first of all, I get in how I arrived to Mavic is I was before the lingerie company. When I was working with the former company, we started to get in touch with different investors because we were looking for to sell the company. And I got in touch with the Bourrelier family that at that time was not yet the shareholder of Mavic. But we had discussion. They didn't buy my company. They were just coming and looking at the project, etc. But I don't know. I get into I knew Jean-Michel Bourrelier, and it was we were talking the same language. We had a good discussion, and basically we said each other to stay in touch.
Sure.
And then I managed the other company for another 2 years and a half, or something like that. And then we basically had probably a lunch every 6 months or something like that, just to share our experience. And he told me when they bought Mavic, what was their plan, their challenge. That Mavic was, I didn't know Mavic. Mavic was a extremely iconic brand in the cycling industry that went through a very different period because between 2015 and 2020, the sales dropped because of some strategic decision. Then in 2019, Mavic was sold to a private equity fund that didn't really wanted to invest and to relaunch the company, and filed for a bankruptcy in end of 2019. And at the time, so in early 2020, the group decided to acquire Mavic to relaunch this iconic brand, to build a group around the expertise of Mavic, and to make Mavic, would say, back to the position he had in the cycling industry. 2021 was the period where everybody was thinking that cycling was ever growing market.
Sure.
That is the same period where some other very, very expensive acquisition have been made by private equity, etc. Everybody wanted to enter into cycling. They started, so the market was booming. It was just easy to. The problem was to have the products, and because the supply chain was struggling, and basically the idea was, okay, it will be easy to build again a big group to grow the business easily because the market is booming.
But you weren't involved. I just want to make sure
No,
that this is clear.
no,
So the Bourlier Group bought the
yeah,
company in July of 2020,
yeah,
and so they probably didn't pay that COVID premium. They probably bought it for somewhat of a, not a discount, but they bought it because it was just coming out of bankruptcy.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
They, yeah.
And then who ran Mavic from 2020 until you arrived? It was the existing management team, or
Yeah,
what was going on?
it was a fully new development team that with some background in automotive, with the vision of making volumes, making kind of getting the efficiency to make volumes and to grow volumes into the wheels sector, making kind of a on the base of the, I would say, of the automotive sector, try to have kind of platforms to be very efficient and build the volumes. Two things, and basically they were able to structure the company, and they did a very good job in structuring the company because it was a carve out, because Mavic before was fully integrated in Salomon. So the big challenge was to take the Mavic out and to create from scratch IT, ERP system, finance, and on that they really did a good job. On the other side, the strategy of going for volumes did work shortly because in 2022 the market was still booming, so they had
Sure.
a growth. But as soon as the market started to struggle in early 2023, basically the structure that have been built and the industrial footprint that was still very complex with the plant with eventually four plants to produce was too complex. And 2023 was extremely difficult because the market went down 25 to 30%. Sales went down even higher level, and of course the losses were important. And
Sure.
it was at that time that the Bourrelier family took over as again also the operational control, and Jean-Michel Bourrelier asked me to help as a consultant to understand the market, the opportunity, to understand the organization, and to try to build a new business plan to recover and to be profitable, because at that time the Mavic had some losses. And
Oh,
we worked together for almost, I would say, 4 to 5 months. I was at the beginning, I was not, I was just, I was really interested in doing the consultancy and working into the strategy, etc. But the more I entered into Mavic, the more I was interested about the cycling industry, the history of the Mavic brand, the potential of the Mavic brand. At the end, in early 2024, I started discussing with him that I would have been interested to not only to set the strategy and to build a business plan, but also to do it, to
execute.
become
Yeah. Yeah.
operational, to execute
So,
the business plan.
and so the Boulier family, my French is terrible, is a family office. It's not private equity?
No, it's not private equity. Is a group that is on the stock exchange, is on the Paris Stock Exchange, but is fully owned by the family. So it kind of works as a family office with investment in different field. The retail, do-it-yourself retail business that was the historical business of the family. They are operating in the hotel business. They have also some other activity, and they add Mavic to their portfolio.
Okay. Well, now we're here. It took us about 40 minutes, but we're here at the beginning of your journey with Mavic. But I think it was super interesting to get through kind of how you got here, because to become a CEO it's a curious and it's a unique thing, and I'm really glad we got to talk about that. So now you're at Mavic, and this was about little over a year ago that
Yeah.
you took over. And so what is your mandate? What was your mandate coming in, Alberto? Like what does the family
Yeah.
want? What do you want to
Yeah.
bring to the brand?
The mandate was, first of all, to restore the profitability of the business and grow the business for the next 5 to 10 years. The advantage of having a family shareholder versus a private equity shareholder is that the timeline is much more long. There is not this huge pressure of entering into a project, starting thinking about the exit strategy. We have with the Burel Group, we are really focusing of making Mavic profitable
But
and
healthy.
making Mavic again
Healthy.
a big name, healthy name, and long-lasting name in the cycling industry.
Yeah.
So this is the key difference.
And it's not, so I've seen this in cycling, where cycling's a funny business in a sense that you can be an iconic brand, but you can also have, even though you're iconic, like you have to deliver. Like even if you do have the best reputation, you still have to deliver, because customers are, they're finicky and they're going to change. So what is the plan? What has been your plan to get to profitability?
Yeah. But first of all, what is still struggling me a lot in this industry is since I entered and I starting discussing with all the, let's say, the competitors, customer, etc. We were in a crisis. Everybody was kind of saying, yes, there is a crisis, but 2024 will be a good year. Then moving forward, yes, unfortunately 2024 was not a good year, and now everybody started saying 2025 will be okay, and now we are still in a kind of a recession. So it's an industry where, let's say, making forecast is probably more difficult, and the understanding of this market is extremely difficult. We are now in 2025. The market is still very difficult to understand.
Why?
We are
Why do you think that is, that you've worked in all different types of businesses and all different type of industries?
Yeah, probably datas are less when you work in domestic appliances, etc. Overall, you have a lot of datas. Then we are in the sports business, in the fashion business, so it's not durables. That basically there is kind of, you can make some pretty precise fridge will last, etc. For what concern bikes, depends on many things. And also, I think that probably bicycle industry went into a very a period. Basically, there was a positive cycle from 2016, 17 to 2020, 21. It was already a positive cycle. On this positive cycle, we had the arrival of the electrical bikes that basically make this cycle even more positive, because it was not a substitution, but in many cases was an addition to the market. And on top of that, in with the COVID, we had this rush after COVID to buy a bicycle because people spent 3, 4 months locked in their houses, and then they wanted to go out, reconnect with the nature, and especially the mountain bike business had a huge peak. So basically, on a positive cycle, we had two external factors that makes the business booming. Now, and now the cycle, because bicycle is a cycle business, cycling business. Now we are in the downturn, and the downturn is probably stronger because of the two elements that I say. So I think that we'll experience some adjustment in the next couple of years. On the long term, I think the business will is an interesting business. The business will grow. There are fundamentals that are positive on the business, but on the short term, I think it's still very complex.
And so you're saying that that what you had mentioned earlier was, as opposed to like larger brands, larger markets like appliances, where there's data available on what the market is doing, where you can sort of react and see what's happening in a faster way. In cycling, it's just not, that data is just not available, is what you're saying?
Yeah, they are less available. Is a smaller market. So it's, and there is this fact that there is in the market we are, let's say yeah, it's not so, yeah, market data are not so easy to understand and to get. So I think
Just not
it's a less
available.
mature, is a less mature market to make a forecast.
Okay.
Then for what concerns Mavic today, what we did since I arrived at the end is pretty basics because we are talking about, we have a strong brand, but it's a brand that needs to be rejuvenated. And we have products. What is making the strength of has always been the products. So we need to rework even more consistently on the DNA of Mavic, that is about performance and innovation. This is why we have reorganized the company, but we haven't make any strong cut or change into the product development part, because this is the core of our business. What we have done is that we have reorganized our industrial footprint. We have simplified our industrial footprint in order to be much more adapted to this kind of a very fluctuating market environment. We are much more flexible now than 1 year ago, and we have so we have now a structure that is online with our market, and that will give us, in any case, the possibility to grow as soon as the market will recover and will be a little bit more, let's say, more strong.
And so, in terms of just kind of giving people, so you're renewing the range. I know you'd said, I was actually able to see the new range at the Riva Bike Festival. And so you're investing in product. It sounds like that had been a little bit starved in the past, was part of the kind of the problems that Mavic ran into, which, for me, that's not a surprise at all, because, cycling is very product driven. In terms of aftermarket and OEM, is there like a target split that you guys are going to be shooting for, long term?
Yeah, both are for me key for the success of Mavic, and they are very complementary. And probably one of the issues in 2015, when Mavic started having issues, is that the strategy was to kind of run out of the OEM, because of, in OEM your margin are a little bit are lower than in aftermarket, of course. So, but for me, having the two businesses is really key. OEM is giving you a better understanding of the trends. Together, my team, that is a dedicated team in OEM, is working with a bicycle manufacturer on NY 27 and 28 products. So we discuss with them. We can do some co-development. We can really have the feeling on where the market is going and understanding the trend. In the past year, of course, we have been able to develop a lot of gravel wheel set that and is helping a lot in our sales today because this is the big trend today. So, and the other important point of being in OEM is that it gives you visibility on the shop floor
Sure.
because when
Yep.
because having the Mavic brand on the good brand, bicycle brand is important. What I always say to my customers, to my OEM customer, and to my sales people is that our value proposition for OEM is not only a wheel. Our value proposition is create value for your bicycle,
Yeah.
and
It's an
everything we
ingredient.
are
It's an ingredient brand
exactly
from that standpoint, right?
exactly. So this is important. Then aftermarket is about innovation, is about performance
Upgrade. It's about upgrade,
and
isn't it?
upgrade,
Yeah.
and then is about passion. This is why we are working hard to be. Of course, you need some. You need to have innovation. You need to have new ideas. Now the big trend is, of course, is our for road and gravel, and also mountain bike is carbon wheels. This is why we have around 10 more engineering working on composite. We have we are we keep our own capacity in terms of production of composite carbon wheels because having this flexibility allows us to propose ideas, innovation in the next year. And every year, your aftermarket needs some new ideas. Not the full range has to be renewed, but you need to have a pace and propose always
Innovation. Innovation.
innovation.
Yeah. And
And
that's super interesting because the ingredient brand is where you're providing value to the bike manufacturers and you're positioning yourself as an ingredient to bring value to that. And then from the upgrade, it's the assortments are a bit different, I presume.
yes, the assortment are a little bit different. Of course, you are more on the specific needs. You are more on the performance side, even though let's say the the OEM the OEM wheels are improving. Probably 20 years ago, the OEM a bicycle were arriving with decent, but not really strong wheel. While now already the first mount wheel are pretty good. Of course, when you arrive with an upgrade, you need to have the top. You need to have a story, and the story is not only a marketing story. Needs to be a technical story. Needs to be built on what talks to the passionate. When we are talking about road, we are talking about aerodynamics. We are talking about gaining watts. This is what we are really focusing on. For example, we have almost two sessions in the wind tunnel per month. Those are the key development on which we are focusing now.
And what about apparel and equipment? Is that something that's still part of your strategy?
Yes, again, Mavic is let's say, the expert of the wheel, but what we want to be is to provide the best experience for a cyclist, and the best experience is also coming with the wheel, but it's coming also with the rider equipment. We had quite a lot of work to do in the last 4 years because coming out of the Salomon Group, we had to recreate our all our base of suppliers in
Sure.
rider equipment. we have relocated 90% of our supplier for apparel and shoes in Europe versus Asia. And so now we are a full range of apparel, helmets, and shoes, and we are on a pace. We are growing. Last year we grew about 40% in rider equipment. We are almost on the same pace this year. So it's something that is complementary to our key core business that are and will remain the wheels, but this complement is getting power. It's
That's
getting
interesting.
more and more strong.
That's super interesting because I mean, the yellow is powerful. Like me as a, as a consumer, the yellow is super powerful. It's iconic. Like people continue to, it's part of the lore of cycling, right? The yellow Peugeot. And so, being in clothing and being in equipment, obviously I think if it's working, you want to keep going, but from a positioning standpoint, there is some conflict there, right? Or no?
No, I don't find. Let's say for some of the category is the competition is very strong. For example, for apparel,
Yeah. Very, very strong.
there is very strong competition. We are fighting against specialists. And let's say the other point is that let's say our dealers, the IDDs, the independent dealers, are kind of stepping out of apparel because
Sure.
it's a kind of a difficult business.
It's an online business.
Needs
It's
to
becoming an
replenish.
online business.
Yeah, exactly. It's becoming an online business. We, we I mean, our range will not compete against, let's say, the specialists, etc. But we decided to have a range that can really complement our offer. And we are really also working pretty well with some chain that are entering into the cycling industry because we are not in the, because Mavic is not an entry price brand. Mavic is about quality, is about performance, is about innovation, and we try to keep this same DNA as well in we are ambition. We have an ambition to grow this business. We are patient, so we are not pushing pricing, etc., to grow too fast. We want to grow steadily.
So we're coming up on an hour here, and I want to respect your time, but I do have some questions about OEM business. I imagine that's a lot of B2B. It's talking with producers. That's I don't want to dive into that too much, but from a commercial standpoint, can you just tell me a little bit about how you guys are approaching the aftermarket business? Like, I presume you've got your brick and mortar retailers where you're working through distributors and retailers. You've got your online retailers, resellers, specialist retailers, which are, in my view, becoming much more important. In the last 10 years, they've become much more important. And then you've got your direct to consumer business. Can
Mhm.
you just run through very quickly, kind of top line, how
Yeah,
you guys are handling these three types of market segmentations?
yeah. Our I, we need, in any case, today, in all sectors, and I mean, my experience in other sectors is the same. You cannot say, I will just go for one channel
No,
because it
no,
does not work. Because
nope.
channels are very, the
Complementary.
frontier, exactly, are complementary, but also the frontier from one channel to the other are
Yeah, they
very.
feed each other. Absolutely.
So our focus, of course, we think that, and I'm pretty convinced that in the bicycle industry, the independent retailers are extremely important because the strength of
The
having
physical space.
the physical space,
Yeah.
advice, technical service
Yep.
is huge.
Huge.
So I
Huge.
we we really focus and refocus because in the past we were kind of a bit probably shifting too much towards the retailers, etc. We are really focusing on independent our partners, independent retailers.
But it's expensive though, right? I mean,
That's
you have to almost overinvest to get 10 retailers, you have to spend probably 5 times as much as to get that same online business. But at the end of the day, you lose those retailers, you are in big trouble.
yeah. I again, it's expensive, but it's worth,
Sure.
and the value that they are able to create is extremely important. So the point is to have a pricing strategy that is coherent and allows you to protect, still working with the retailers, because of course I cannot not work with the main player on the internet. So but if you have a coherent strategy, pricing strategy, etc., this can work. And so those two elements are extremely key. We are developing, we are growing on both channels in the last year and also in 2025. So it means that our approach is working. Of course, to work with independent retailers, you need to have a product. You need to have history to tell, and you have to have a solid and quality products. This is the key, and we are always back to this element.
Sure.
Then
The product is the core,
yeah,
from where everything kind of starts. And where's Amazon in all this?
of course. Then for what concerns the D2C, we have opened our D2C. But our Mavic.com is, of course, we can sell, but we don't want to be competitor with our dealers. So it's kind of a 50% a corporate website where we
Sure.
want to really push our know-how, our brand image, etc. And then the consumer who likes to buy directly from us, he will be able to buy from us at the same price as an independent retailer. We are also building some passerelle between our D2C and our dealers, and this we have not yet open kind of a click to a distributor or something like that, but we will in the future. So we don't want to become, let's say, a new player. We want to protect and to keep developing our IBD's network, and on the same time to work with the main big platform on e-commerce.
And I mentioned Amazon. Is that something that also you guys are approaching as well?
Yeah, we are approaching again Amazon, something that we need to take into consideration, because in any case your customer can go on Amazon. So it's better for me to have the control on what is happening on Amazon. So
Sure.
we are taking control of what is going on Amazon, and we will have our own page to be, as I say, to be in control of this channel as well.
Sure. Well, listen, this was really fun, Alberto. I think you really, really were candid and open. And I think the people that listen to this podcast are really going to have a good time understanding and hearing about your journey, which is an amazing journey from my vantage point. So I'm really glad that you're in the industry now. To have more talent, talented people like you in the industry is great for everybody. Before we go, is there a way, if people want to get in touch with you, what's a good way that they can reach you?
I think the best way is to get in touch with me through LinkedIn. I'm visible there. I always answer to the message, and I
Yep.
will be pleased to get in touch with the person interested, people from the industry or not, but that I can be interested in my what I can bring to this industry as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Alberto. This was fun.
Very good. Thank you to you. It was very interesting for me as well.
Okay. Ciao.
Ciao.